And I think that in our culture, which is highly capitalist, highly goal-oriented, highly product-oriented, death is a huge obstacle to all of those things. So I think that we're conditioned to think that death is like this bad thing that happens. And it is sad, but it's only sad for the living.
You landed a gig in New York for Sing Street. You guys were gonna go to Broadway. COVID happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think we have had a serious conversation about how shitty that situation is. What was your reaction and like to be that close and have it just be gone?
We were at the theater for the first time. It was our first day of tech, and we were like, the show is very music heavy, so we were sound checking. It was like a day of like just balancing the sound for the band.
Yeah.
Because we all like play the instruments in it. Little by little, it started percolating that like Broadway's gonna shut down. And then like we see like an article like Broadway shut down. And then we see an article like so-and-so show closes temporarily. So-and-so show cancels previews. Our producer tells us that we have to postpone. And at this point, we're thinking it's like 2 weeks, you know, like we're going to go back home for like 2 weeks and then COVID will be over and we'll come back and do Sing Street. But I fly to Michigan to stay with my girlfriend, Nina. Shout out to Nina. And I end up staying for like 4 months. For like 4 months, man. I really missed doing Sing Street, but I can't say that I ever had a period of time where I felt like I lost Sing Street, because from the very beginning, they were very clear and like sure about the fact that once everything was over, Sing Street would return. So when people told me that, you know, I'm sorry that, you know, you guys couldn't do it, like that sucks, I was like, yeah, it sucks, but also like I'm patient, you know, I can go do my thing and lay low. And honestly, it ended up being exactly what I needed, because I was really caught up in how fast everything was. It all happened so fast. I got the job in August of 2019.
Yeah.
We workshopped the show August. I went back to school. I like finished one credit that I needed to finish in person. And then in October, I flew back to New York and I did school online. So like my senior year, I finished fully online while doing the New York Theater Workshop run of Sing Street off Broadway. And while we're doing the off Broadway production, there's like, is it gonna go to Broadway? You know, like what's gonna happen? And they announce that we're going to Broadway. And so while we're doing the run of Sing Street off Broadway, we're rehearsing during the day for the Broadway run and doing promo for the Broadway run. And like, it was like a month, like 3 weeks that we didn't have a single day off. Like our day off would be used like performing at Broadway Con or doing a video shoot for Up. Like we were always working, and it happened so fast that I never once took a moment to be like, how am I? Am I, you know, and it wasn't even that I was sad, dude. I was living my fucking dream. I was finally getting to like work with, like, I looked up to Gary Clark so much because Sing Street is my favorite movie. And like, I loved these songs since like 2016, and I'm like working closely with the guy writing the music. Like, you know, I didn't think that I needed to check in on my mental health.
Yeah.
I finally like checked in with myself. I started going to therapy regularly. I started meditating. I was able to look back on my time in college and like, you know, grow from it, like tell what I did wrong. where I was wronged, like, you know, be able to really reflect on that time. It's weird. I think that, and I guess maybe that's why I started writing songs, is because I had time to reflect, and I think all of my music is very reflective in that way.
Do you think that that was you finally realizing that you could have all these things that you want or that you think you want, but it's not ever gonna like make you happy unless without you even kind of checking in on yourself? Like if you are caught up in the moment with everything, you're never allowing yourself to be you never allow yourself to heal through anything.
Yeah, it's strange because I felt very fulfilled.
Right.
I felt unbelievably accomplished. I felt you know, like I was making the people who I loved really proud. And these are all really great things to feel. But, you know, it's still a job. Mm-hmm. I'm working, you know, like a full schedule, like especially when we're rehearsing, pushing my body to its limits to do this show. Like, you know, I don't work out, bro. Like my body was like, you know, I was like out of shape and shit. And I'm doing this show that's like really high energy every night. And I'm like singing like rock songs every night, like loud. You know, you're pushing your body to its limits. Like you're doing 2 shows a day sometimes. You know, twice a week you do 2 shows a day. You know, I used to think like this job will be easy, man. Like I get to do nothing during the day and then show up at the theater at 6, do the show, and then go home. But like, nah, there's a reason that's the schedule. Like,
yeah, you had a big reality check.
Yeah, and I think that it's really easy to romanticize, like, you know, making it. And I don't even want to say that I've made it. You know, I got to work on this play that I was really passionate about, but it's a job. It's a job. In a play like Sing Street, I definitely felt like more of a piece of the puzzle, you know? Like I'm doing my part in this show that like really is the vision of our director and the writers, and like we get to put our, you know, like I get to put my vision into my character, like right. I get to decide, like, and with the guidance of the director, like we get to like put our own artistic, you know, vision into it. But as an actor, you're really like a one piece of the machine, of like this well-oiled machine. Like theater is really like that. But in making my album, for example, I am making all of the decisions. I'm recording almost all the instruments. It's like a completely different creative endeavor. And so I think that with acting, I feel like it was more of a job, maybe because it was actually a job.
Right.
But with making my music, and even with Office Hours, it doesn't feel like as much of a job. Because, I mean, maybe it's also because it isn't really a job yet, but...
I feel like it's a job all the time. I'm like, we have to rehearse.
But honestly, that's when, like, I was just talking to Seth about this. Like, if we commit ourselves to working on our music as a job, like, it'll start yielding the same way that a job would. Whereas if we're like, let's just meet up and then like
see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. You know, we could make something amazing, but if we really commit to it as a job, you know, it'll just have a different energy going into it.
There'll be different outcomes.
Yeah.
Something that Josh will always say is he doesn't like the pressure, because once the pressure is applied, then it doesn't become fun anymore.
I understand that. I definitely agree to an extent, but I also think that there's a difference between pressure and concentration. And I feel like music, or at least the way that I love to make music, demands a lot of concentration. And I think that concentration in many different senses of the word, like I record my albums in a really concentrated amount of time. Like it took me, you know, a really short period of time to record No Love for Cowboy.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was unbelievably fun to me. Like I would wake up and start recording bass because nobody was awake, so I couldn't record guitars yet, so I would just record bass tracks because I could plug that straight into my laptop and like play without having to use an amp. You know, like I was recording all day, and that's like very concentrated, and I guess that's just how I work. Like I can't.
You work differently than them though.
Right.
I would think we all work very differently. It depends on the motives.
I think that you and I are similar in that our process is very intuitive. You know, like I think for me, my music comes from my gut. And I think that your the thing you just said about like your music coming from like you have to say something, like,
yeah,
you know, like that sounds to me like it builds from your gut. Like I'm a very intuitive music maker. I think Josh is a very intellectual music maker. And I think that Seth is a feeling music maker.
Yeah.
You know, when we write a song, like Seth will just like be in his feelings and he'll write like the verse to Car. And then Josh will ask him like, what are you feeling? And I'll be like, yo, trust me, this chord. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different ways of working. Like, when I started writing the songs for No Love for Cowboy, like, I didn't even realize that they were about New York until I had written like 7 of them. And then I realized like, oh, these songs are all about my time in New York. Like, I felt like a cowboy. Actually, the name for the record came from the first gig that I played in New York with Spoon. Shout out to Spoonio. It was a Halloween gig, so I was dressed as a cowboy for Halloween. I was dressed as a cowboy, and Brennick from Sing Street was dressed as a priest. And there's this band playing, and they're like dressed as knights, and they're like talking like knights, you know, like the guy is like, "You, sire, in the priestly garb, thank you for your applause." And so they say that to Brennick, and I go, damn, No Love for Cowboy? And I was like, and I like wrote it down on my notes, and I was like, that's a good title, and I kept it. And like I didn't do anything with it. And then we rehearsed Sing Street, like we did all of Sing Street. COVID happens, I go to Michigan, and I just start writing songs, and I'm like, oh, this is No Love for Cowboy. And I realized that the record was about being in New York on my own and feeling, you know, like Nina was in Michigan.
Yeah. So
like in that sense, it's like No Love for Cowboy. Like she's in, like we're in a long distance relationship, and like, you know, it's also No Love for Cowboy, and like, you know, not having a community when you arrive, you know, like being lost. Like I took my guitar and my clothes and I like apartment hopped for 3 months. Like I didn't stay in one spot for longer than a month. Like I felt like a cowboy. I felt like a blues man. Like when all those blues guys like Robert Johnson and like what's his name, R.L. Burnside, like these guys, like they live their lives just like going place to place, like singing, playing blues, making like no money. And that's how I felt, man. I was like, I'm going place to place singing. And at the same time, I was reading The Alchemist, and I was listening to a lot of blues music and rock music. And so then when I started writing all of these songs, I realized that subconsciously I was creating material that was like this blend of all of those things, of my experiences, of the music that I was inspired by. Like I realized that No Love for Cowboy is like the plot line to The Alchemist, like loosely, but it like, you know, the
you're
Alchemist,
on your own, like you're on your journey in search of your personal legend.
Yes, and even more specifically, like the woman of the desert, and like how he like tells her like, I'll come back, I just have to go follow my personal legend.
Yeah, I remember that. And
like when he becomes the wind, that's what Waves is about. Like when I sing like I'm all waves, like he becomes the wind, like everything is everything, like that same idea.
You just spoiled the book for me, but okay.
Gosh. Everybody feels like The Alchemist is about them. That's the point of The Alchemist.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at it that way, because it helps you reflect on like, what is it that you want to be in search of? Like, what are you after? Right.
And that's what I realized in retrospect. I was like, oh, I achieved the thing that I was in search of. I like did it. And then I realized like my life isn't just that, you know, my life is also the way that I treat the people who I meet outside of that context. My life is also the people that I met before I did that. My life is also the things that I will do after this job. And, you know, it all happened so fast that I kind of got caught up in like, you know, this is so sick. Like I'm doing photo shoots and like I'm meeting Gary Clark. Like I mean,
you were thrilled.
I was thrilled, dude. It was the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. I met Tony Shalhoub because he came to see my play. Tony Shalhoub is my favorite actor, bro. I remember seeing Tony Shalhoub in Spy Kids. I remember seeing Tony Shalhoub in Monk, and seeing him in the band's Visit, bro. Like, I love Tony Shalhoub. And when I met him, he already acknowledged me as a legitimate artist because he saw me act on a New York stage before I met him. So when I met him, he told me that I did a good job in the play. Like, I was living my fucking dream, bro. And then when it was all like poof, you know, like I was like, oh, whoa, I still have music and I still have more to say besides doing Sing Street.
Yeah.
And that's when I started writing Nola for Cowboy,
which is out now. Isn't it wild how, like, I feel like music is, or art technically is pretty much the only thing that's eternal.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot actually, because full disclosure, I don't even know when this will come out, so maybe this is like, maybe the truth of this statement will be different when this comes out, but my grandfather is currently dying. Like kind of slowly. Like he has a lot of health conditions. Like he has COPD, he's got pulmonary fibrosis, he's got diabetes, he's got heart failure, he's got like high cholesterol. He like had a few strokes. Like he's really in rough shape. So I've been thinking a lot about like, you know, you and I are gonna die too, but we don't think about that because we're in good health and we're so young, and you know, we're just concerned with living life and doing it. But in like seeing my grandfather like inch towards death, I've been thinking a lot about my life as a finite thing, and how the things that we leave behind, in my case and in a lot of people's cases, is like art, music, relationships that you make with people, lessons that you teach. You know, there's a lot of things to leave behind, but music really strikes me, and art really strikes me as one of the most not time tested, but like lasting things, you know. I have had family members die, but I was always somehow like I had just missed it. My great grandmother died in 2018, I want to say, and I was supposed to come here because she lived here when she died. I was supposed to come here on a weekend, you know, like for fall break or something like that, to visit my family and see her. But like just before I made it, she died. And I think the way that I rationalized it back then was that the universe was actually bringing me home, not to see her, but to be here for my family in a time of loss. But in that, I kind of removed myself from experiencing the loss. I kind of felt like I came to like help my family heal. And so I never really acknowledged that I also was experiencing feelings of grief. Like I kind of like shut them off. My great grandfather died before that, long before that, and I was doing a show at the time, so like I was kind of distracted from you know, like there was a day when like the whole family went to visit him, like everybody in the family went to visit him. I'm never gonna forget this. And they took like a picture of like the whole family except me, because I was in rehearsal for this show, and it was like the last picture of like the whole family together. Like, I've always been kind of removed from experiencing death. Like, I've always been like, I like just miss it. This is the first time when, you know, I'm really there. And so a part of me, you know, like my guilty conscience, I think, or my guilty unconscious is telling me to spend as much time as I can with my grandfather now. Even though my conscience is telling me that I am anxious about death and afraid of death.
Yeah.
So seeing him almost, you know, triggers that for me. But that's also like a selfish thought to be like, oh, it makes me scared to see him, you know, like he's the one who's about to not have a life. And I know that it would be meaningful to him to be able to see his family. You know, everybody's coming to visit. My cousins just came to visit. My uncle is here today seeing him. My sister made it back in time to be able to see him. But it's rough and really scary. Nothing is guaranteed except death. I think that in our culture, we have this idea that death is a bad thing that happens to us, that life is the good thing that happens to us, which in a way I understand, because life is, you know, full of possibility. Life has unbelievable potential for good, you know,
it's
like
exciting.
Exactly. It's amazing. It's the greatest gift, whatever, you know, like cliche, like life. But in Eastern cultures, they talk about death very differently. I've been reading a lot about Paramahansa Yogananda. I read his book, Autobiography of a Yogi. If you can read that book, go read that book. It's really cool. But in it, they talk about death as a different kind of threshold, because they believe that the physical body is one manifestation of the spiritual body, and then like on top of that there's like the astral body or like the cosmic body, so like it's different levels of existence. And they, as yogis, will go into this state called samadhi, which is like you enter like spirit consciousness. And then when a yogi enters mahasamadhi or mahasamadhi, I'm butchering these terms, is death. So it's like the final conscious exit of the spirit from the body, which is like an entirely different way of thinking about death than what we think of it as, which is like kaput, like you're done, like you can't do anything else now. And I think that in our culture, which is highly capitalist, highly goal-oriented, highly product-oriented, death is a huge obstacle to all of those things. So I think that we're conditioned to think that death is like this bad thing that happens. And it is sad, but it's only sad for the living. I think there's a lot of people alive who don't think that a living interaction with somebody is their last interaction with somebody.